So, Jonathan, thanks for being with us today at the CMT. The government has seemingly made good on its February promise to increase funding to the ABC in 2022-23. How much of a difference will that make, do you think, to the corporation?
Well, it's a lot better than the opposite, which would be not increasing the ABC's funding at all, or indeed reducing it, has of course happened in previous budgets. But look, it's a very, very small increase. In fact, there has been no actual increase other than indexation, and that is not indexation to the CPI as we would normally understand it. I can tell you the phrase, I think. It's indexed, I'm told, to the weighted average cost index. And the weighted average cost index, whatever that is a good deal lower than the CPI. To give you an idea, we look at the figures. The operational budget for the ABC, which is the one that matters, there's a couple of $100 million that go to transmission, which are outside the ABC's control, but the operational budget is increasing next financial year by 0.7%.
Which is a very small.
Well, I mean, CPI inflation is currently running at over 3%, I think. In 2023-24, it will increase by 2%. So that's a year when there's quite a substantial increase. And then in 24-25, it will increase by 1.6%. So these are very small projections of likely inflation. And in real terms, the chances are the ABC will be worse off at the end of this triennium, assuming that this government stays in power and that no changes are made, than it is right now. It certainly is not going to be substantially better off in any respect.
So clearly that it would be the reasoning why the ABC is saying that there will be no increase in staff numbers. It's all, we're sitting where we are, we're standing still.
We're going backwards in real terms, almost certainly. The ENG, the Enhanced News Gathering, which is a sort of separate discretionary allowance, has been continued. That's around 15 million a year, and that will be continued and to some degree increased very slightly too. But it has not been consolidated into the operating budget, which would have been preferable. So it's still removable and may be removed at the end of that 3-year term. So that would be like a $15 million loss if that happened. And indeed the loss of substantial numbers of journalist jobs in the regions.
So, Jonathan, the ABC and indeed the SBS are stuck in these 3-year funding cycles, and ABC Alumni has been quite vocal in calling for that to be extended to 5 years. What impact do you think it would have on public interest journalism if indeed that cycle were to be extended to 5 years?
Well, look, it would give a bit more reassurance, and hopefully it might make it a little bit harder for incoming governments that are different from the outgoing government to sort of change the funding mid-term, although frankly governments can do what they like. And so even if there were some sort of convention, or even I suspect legislation that says that 5-year terms should be the norm, you can always make a new law once you've got a majority. The other thing is, as some people have pointed out to me inside the ABC, it all depends on what that funding is. I mean, what you don't want is for a Tony Abbott to come along, slash 5% off your budget, and then that's fixed for 5 years. That's worse than a 3-year term, yeah. So a lot of the benefit of the 5-year is to give certainty and to obviate the possibility or the ease with which people can change the numbers over that period. But you still need decent funding for that 5 years. Otherwise, you're worse off than you otherwise would be.
You raise the issue there about, history showing that governments haven't been particularly good at keeping their promises to the ABC about funding. How concerned is ABC Alumni this time around? Well,
look, as you say, we have had a budget. Presumably that budget, if this government is re-elected, will last 4 years. But of course, there is also a massive pressure to reduce a very, very substantial national debt. And that could easily be used as a reason to retrench the ABC, as lots of other areas. So I don't think, you know, we can say that the ABC's home and hose for the next 3 years. Cuts are always possible. And indeed, it's important to understand that the Labour Party, although it has committed to these 5-year terms, has not committed to any substantial increase in the ABC's funding. It is, you know, and it's really important, I think, that we at the alumni and others try to put pressure on the ALP to come up with something more than they've come up with so far. You know, clearly what the government was trying to do in making its announcement in February is to take the ABC as an issue off the table at this election campaign. How successful it's been, it's hard to tell at this point, but obviously it's defused it to some degree with a lot of people. And people like Dave Sharma in Wentworth and others facing the independents who are pushing for the ABC is one of their issues. Will be very relieved that at least they can say, you know, the ABC is getting support. Dave Sharma, incidentally, just to mention him, who's my local member where I live, sent an election leaflet around claiming that he had been instrumental in securing a record increase for the ABC. I mean, that is just nonsense. The Rudd government increased the ABC's budget by substantially more than the 84 million that we're going to get, and a purely nominal increase over the next 3 years. So yeah, all kinds of furphies are being spread around.
And yet we heard this week from the communications minister warning the ABC board and editorial staff to be wary of attempts by Labor to politicise the ABC ahead of the election. What did you make of that? I'm
not quite sure what to make of it, except as obviously he's trying to ensure that the ABC doesn't openly lobby for its own benefit, and that's fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. I'm sure the ABC will be careful not to do so. That's why organisations like ABC Alumni are important, because we can say the stuff that the ABC itself can't. And we intend to do so. And ABC Friends and Get Up and all these other outfits that have the ABC's interests at heart will no doubt be doing the same thing.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're welcome, Monica.